Imagine this. You're sitting across the table from someone you've called a friend for years. They're laughing at your jokes, nodding when you speak, even patting you on the back as if they've got your best interests at heart. On the surface, everything looks normal, warm, safe, and supportive. But beneath that smile, behind those encouraging words, something darker is at work. Slowly, quietly, they are dismantling you, piece by piece, confidence by confidence, choice by choice. This is not the story of an obvious enemy, the person who openly mocks you, who betrays you outright, who shows you their hostility with no disguise. No, this is about something far more dangerous. The friend who smiles while destroying you, the one who cloaks their envy, insecurity, and manipulations behind a mask of loyalty, the one you let in close enough to hurt you because you never suspect they're holding the knife. And here is the most chilling part. Many of us don't recognize these people until the damage is already done. We write off the unease as our own paranoia. We excuse their jokes as harmless teasing. We accept their concerns as care. All the while, their smile blinds us to their true intention. So in this video, I want to walk you into that subtle battlefield, because that's what it is. A battlefield not of swords and shields, but of words, gestures, and silences. I'll show you how to notice the microsigns, the hidden manipulations, the strange contradictions that give them away. Because once you see it, once you really see it, you'll never unsee it again. And this isn't about creating paranoia or teaching you to mistrust everyone you love. It's about clarity. It's about equipping you to separate genuine friendship from cleverly disguised sabotage. Because the truth is, sometimes the people who smile the brightest are the ones who dim your light the most. So let's pull the mask off this smiling destroyer. Let's expose the tactics, the patterns, and the emotional traps they set. And by the end of this journey, you lines not only be able to spot them, you lines be able to protect yourself without losing your own warmth and authenticity. Let's begin. The most dangerous enemy is not the one who stands in front of you with fists clenched, it's the one who stands beside you, smiling. Why? Because betrayal feels sharper when it comes from someone you trust. It's not just the act of harm that wounds you, but the collapse of the trust you invested. These smiling enemies don't usually announce themselves. They don't storm into your life like villains from a movie. They slip in quietly, wearing the costume of a friend. They're helpful, attentive, and sometimes even overly supportive at first. They make you feel seen. They make you feel safe. And that's exactly how they set the stage. What makes them so effective is their ability to operate under the radar. They don't attack your self-worth directly, at least not in ways that would make you suspicious. Instead, they chip away at you with tiny fractures, a compliment that carries a hint of mockery, a piece of advice that plants self-doubt instead of confidence, a laugh at your expense that sounds harmless but lingers in your mind long after. And because they always frame their words with a smile, you question yourself before you question them. Am I being too sensitive? Am I imagining things? Maybe they didn't mean it that way. And in those moments of self-doubt, they win. Because while you're busy doubting yourself, they're busy advancing their hidden agenda. But here's the truth. Not every smile is an expression of love or loyalty. Sometimes, a smile is a disguise, a mask that conceals envy, bitterness, or the hunger for control. You'll notice it in subtle contradictions. Their words of encouragement never quite line up with their actions. They cheer you on publicly, but privately they discourage your risks. They support your dreams in conversation, but behind the scenes they whisper doubts that slow you down. And the scariest part, many of these smiling enemies don't even see themselves as villains. In their minds, they're protecting you, or keeping you grounded, or just being honest. They rationalize their sabotage as care, when in reality, it's their own insecurity trying to keep you small. This is why you need to sharpen your awareness, not to push people away, not to isolate yourself, but to recognize the mask when it's being worn. Because the longer you mistake that smile for friendship, the deeper the damage it can do. And once you can see through the mask, you begin to see everything. When someone wants to harm you while keeping the mask of friendship intact, they can't use obvious weapons. They can't shout at you, humiliate you openly, or betray you in a way everyone can see because that would expose them. Instead, they use subtle weapons, weapons so quiet, you barely notice the cut until you're already bleeding. The first weapon is the backhanded compliment. It's the kind of praise that feels good in the moment, but leaves a strange aftertaste. They'll say things like, "Wow, you did better than I expected," or "That's actually impressive for someone like you." On the surface, they're lifting you up, but hidden beneath is the message that they never believed in you to begin with. That seed of doubt is what they want you to carry. The second weapon is strategic doubt. These friends will frame their discouragement as concern. They'll ask questions like, "Are you sure you're ready for that? Or do you really think you can handle it?" They won't say, "You can't do it." That would make them look unsupportive. Instead, they let the question hang in the air, leaving you to wrestle with uncertainty that wasn't even yours to begin with. The third weapon is humor as a shield. They'll laugh at your ideas, your mistakes, even your ambitions, but always with a smile, always followed by, "I'm just joking." And because no one wants to be the person who can't take a joke, you swallow your discomfort. Over time, those jokes chip away at your confidence, and the destroyer smiles, knowing they've wounded you without ever appearing cruel. The fourth weapon is silence. Sometimes what hurts most is not what they say, but what they withhold. You share exciting news, and they offer no genuine reaction. You open up about your struggles, and they give you cold detachment. This absence of support makes you second-guess your worth. Their silence is calculated. It communicates disapproval without ever needing words. And finally, the most insidious weapon, selective loyalty. In your presence, they act like your biggest ally, but when you're not around, they shift. They let others mock you. They let others question you. Sometimes, they even add subtle fuel to the fire, and when the story makes its way back to you, they'll deny it with wide eyes and that same disarming smile. These weapons are powerful because they don't leave obvious wounds. No one else may even see what's happening. And often, you end up blaming yourself instead of recognizing the pattern. But once you spot the pattern, their weapons lose their power. Because the moment you name the tactic, it stops being invisible. If you've ever been hurt by someone who smiled while doing it, the question that burns in your mind is always the same. Why? Why would someone who calls themselves your friend want to undermine you? Why would they go out of their way to dim your light? The answer isn't always simple, but it almost always comes down to insecurity and envy. You see, real friends celebrate your growth because your success doesn't threaten them. But to the smiling destroyer, your progress is a mirror reflecting their own stagnation. Every time you take a step forward, it reminds them of the steps they haven't taken. Every achievement of yours whispers to them about their own unrealized potential. And instead of facing their shortcomings, it's easier to pull you back down. Another motive is control. Some people only feel safe when they're the stronger one in the friendship. As long as you're the one leaning on them, asking for advice, or needing support, they feel powerful. But the moment you start standing tall, making bold moves, succeeding without their input, they panic. So they undermine you, not because they hate you, but because they're terrified of losing their position in your life. Then there's competition disguised as care. These are the friends who seem to cheer you on, but inside, everything is a scoreboard. If you succeed, they feel like they're losing. So they inject small doubts, hoping to slow you down just enough to keep the balance in their favor. Sometimes, the motive is resentment built over time. Maybe you achieved something they always wanted. Maybe you received attention they never did. Maybe your very presence reminds them of something they lack. They might not even consciously acknowledge this resentment, but it seeps out in their jokes, their silences, their subtle sabotage. And finally, there's a more unsettling motive: habit. Some people have learned to bond through negativity. They grew up in environments where teasing, criticism, and passive aggression were the default forms of communication. So when they do it to you, They may not even realize the harm they're causing, but unintentional or not, the effect on you is still the same. The key thing to understand is this: their behavior is never really about you. It's about them, their fears, their insecurities, their hidden wars. But if you don't recognize this truth, you risk internalizing their poison as your own weakness. And that's the real danger, not just what they do to you, but what they convince you to do to yourself. What happens if you don't see it? What happens if you keep brushing off that uneasy feeling, convincing yourself you're just overreacting? The cost of ignoring a smiling destroyer is far greater than most people realize. It doesn't usually explode in one dramatic betrayal. Instead, it's slow erosion, a drip of poison, day after day, until you no longer recognize yourself. The first cost is your confidence. With every backhanded compliment, every disguised joke, every doubtful question, a little piece of your certainty breaks away. At first, it's small. You hesitate before making a decision. You second-guess a choice you would have made boldly before. But over time, that hesitation grows into self-doubt, and self-doubt grows into paralysis. Before you know it, you're living smaller than you're capable of, not because of your own fear, but because of the fear someone else planted in you. The second cost is your energy. Being around someone who secretly undermines you is exhausting. You might not realize it consciously, but your body does. You leave conversations feeling drained instead of lifted. You walk away from time together questioning yourself instead of believing in yourself. And that constant drain steals the energy you'd have invested in building, creating, and thriving. The third cost is your relationships with others. Smiling destroyers often manipulate narratives behind your back. They may subtly frame you as unreliable, naive, or arrogant when you're not in the room. Over time, this corrodes how others see you. And because they do it with such charm, you rarely trace it back to them. You just notice people treating you differently, and you don't know why. The fourth cost is your dreams. This is the heaviest one. A destroyer doesn't have to convince you to abandon your vision outright. They just need to slow you down, delay you, make you hesitate. And with every pause, every detour, every moment you hold back, time slips away. Opportunities vanish. Your dream, once sharp and vibrant, begins to blur. Not because you weren't capable, but because you let someone else's disguised doubt dictate your steps. And finally, the deepest cost is losing trust in yourself. Once that trust is broken, it takes years to rebuild. You stop listening to your own voice because theirs has been louder in your head for too long. And that, more than anything, is how they destroy you. This is why awareness matters, because ignoring it doesn't just let them win. It lets them rewrite the story of your life. While you sit silently, wondering how you lost control. When you realize someone has been smiling while destroying you, the natural instinct is to harden, to close yourself off, to never trust anyone again. And while that might feel safe, it's not the answer, because the point of life isn't to become untouchable. It's to learn how to remain open while protecting yourself wisely. So how do you do that? The first step is trusting your gut again. If you walk away from a conversation with someone you call a friend and you consistently feel smaller, weaker, or drained, it's not your imagination. Pay attention to the pattern. Real friends leave you feeling lighter, stronger, and more capable. That feeling is your compass. Follow it. The second step is naming the behavior. The moment you label what's happening, it loses some of its power. Call it what it is: backhanded compliments, disguised doubt, manipulative silence. By naming it, you train your mind to separate their poison from your worth. It becomes clear that their behavior is about them, not about you. The third step is setting boundaries, quiet but firm. You don't always need a dramatic confrontation. Sometimes, it's as simple as giving them less access to your inner world. Share less of your vulnerabilities. Stop giving them front row seats to your biggest dreams. Protect your sacred spaces by controlling who gets inside. The fourth step is testing their loyalty with distance. Pull back a little, Don't reach out as often. Don't share as openly. See how they respond. A true friend will respect the space and still show up with love. A destroyer will feel their grip slipping and often reveal their true nature in the process. And finally, the most powerful step is choosing your circle with intention. Not everyone deserves the title of friend. Reserve that word for people whose actions consistently match their words. Surround yourself with those who lift without cutting, who joke without wounding, who advise without discouraging. Protecting yourself doesn't mean becoming cynical. It means becoming discerning. It means keeping your heart open but guarded by wisdom. Because the truth is, you don't need to expose yourself to destroyers in order to prove you're kind. Real kindness is choosing love and choosing boundaries. And when you master that balance, the smiling destroyer loses all power. They can still smile. They can still try. But you won't bend, you'll see through it and you'll walk away intact. So here's the truth. Not everyone who smiles at you is your friend. Not everyone who laughs with you is loyal to you. And not everyone who stands beside you wants to see you rise. Some wear the mask of friendship while quietly feeding on your doubts, your setbacks, and your insecurities. But now you know how to see them. You know the subtle weapons they use, the disguised compliments, the strategic doubts, the mocking jokes, the manipulative silences. You know the motives that drive them: envy, insecurity, fear of losing control. And you know the cost of ignoring them, how they can drain your energy, erode your confidence, and steal years of your potential if left unchecked. Most importantly, you also know that protecting yourself doesn't mean closing your heart. It doesn't mean becoming cold, bitter, or suspicious of everyone. It means learning the art of discernment, trusting your gut, naming the patterns, choosing your circle wisely. Because here's the reality: for every smiling destroyer, there are also true friends out there. Friends who celebrate your victories without keeping score. Friends who laugh with you, not at you. Friends who see your flaws and still believe in your greatness. Those are the people worth keeping close. So don't let the destroyers win twice, once by undermining you, and again by making you afraid to trust. Let them reveal themselves, thank them silently for the lesson, and step forward stronger. And remember this: the brighter your light, the more it will expose both kinds of people, the ones who want to see you shine, and the ones who can't bear it. Don't dim yourself to make anyone else comfortable. Don't shrink so they can feel tall. Stand tall anyway, smile anyway, live anyway. Because at the end of the day, the best way to defeat a smiling destroyer is not by fighting them, it is by refusing to let their shadow dictate the shape of your life. So ask yourself this: who in your circle truly adds to your growth? And who, with all their charm and all their smiles, has only been subtracting? Your answer to that question might just change everything.